Hi everybody, welcome to New York Buddha Dharma. My name's Michael Rogan, and I am here to give a talk tonight on, the title is The Endless Suffering of Self-Improvement. And this is a way of asking a question of why do we meditate at all? What's it for? What's the purpose? Now, I'm a psychotherapist, that's one of the things I do. And what is often the case for therapy is that people who appear for therapy, as I did when I appeared for therapy many years ago, aren't particularly interested in having their neurotic state of mind, their neurotic processes repaired. What people basically want is to have their neurotic processes work more efficiently so that they can get what they want and be in control of the outcome and just have it go more smoothly without disappointment. You know, that's the idea. And the actual neurotic processes themselves tend to be a bit invisible and not so noticeable. And people want, as a rule, within a fairly simple-minded view of psychotherapy, to just feel better about themselves, feel more supported in their sense of their self, even though their sense of self might not make a lot of sense sometimes. Avoiding difficulty and distress, having good things happen, not having bad things happen. It's not a strange view. It's a very conventional view of the way life is, which is lots of trouble, and what you would like it to be, which is very little trouble and lots of good things. And the question is is this similar to meditation from a Buddhist view? And if you look at many of the popular presentations about meditation and mindfulness, they often have a rather conventional kind of psychotherapeutic goal set that is described. It's about being less anxious, it's being not so depressed, it's about having better relationships, fewer conflicts, being comfortable in my life and my job, achieving the things I want to achieve, all these obstacles that are in my way, I want to find a way to get past them and actualize my career, my creativity, whatever it is. And change the things that I don't like about myself, improve myself, and improve my circumstances. And from this conventional view, the identified problem is the mismatch between myself and my desires and my circumstances and the negative view, the negative emotions that mismatch brings about. Like, I don't want this, I want something else. And so how do I go about it? That's sort of a goal-directed kind of view. The solution is to improve myself, improve my circumstances, and improve my emotional strategy, how to be less upset when things don't go well, how to be attractive, everybody likes people who are happy and peaceful. Well, not everybody, but that kind of thing. You can have an idea of what you would like to be and how that would work better. Now, a Buddhist point of view is different and really does not depend upon this conventional knowledge. Nothing I've said so far is strange or unusual. This is generally how people operate, what they want, what the problem is, what would be better. But the Buddhist point of view does not depend upon conventional information and conventional experience. It depends upon the unusual experience of certain people over the years, over the thousands of years, starting with the historic Buddha 2,500 or so years ago, Shakyamuni Buddha, who had a very different view and taught about it and wrote about it. And as a result of that, in this ensuing time, there has been a lineage, a progress of people, one after the other, who have learned about this and about skillful means that were taught that gave a different view, that really involved a sense of freedom and ease and happiness that is not the conventional solution. And so from a Buddhist perspective, the conventional psychotherapeutic, sort of simple-minded psychotherapeutic approach that I described is both the problem and the solution is entirely contained within a bubble of suffering. There is all of the effort around improving, around developing better strategies, around striving for ways of really getting what you want and reducing conflict in a way that improves things and makes you better, makes everything better, is all submerged in an erroneous view that is called samsara. That's the Sanskrit term. And in samsara, I am the star of the show. I am the permanent star of the show. It's my show, I'm the star. And I am the hero, I am strong, I am weak, I may be sad, maybe sometimes pathetic, but I am always the hero, and it's my show. And the show is about me getting what I want and finding a way to feel comfortable and feel okay and safe, protected in my sense of self and my little stardom that I'm living in, and accumulate all the goodies that I want. That's the idea of samsara. Now, the bad news of Buddhism, and there really is bad news in Buddhism, the bad news is that the Buddhist wisdom about samsara is that our conventional life never works out. We never get it to work out, no matter how much we try. There is just an endless sequence of effort and striving and disappointment, changing goals. And it feels like a very important game to be playing because it feels like we are having impact on outcome and changing things. But the fact is, from a Buddhist point of view, it's all a big sticky mess, and there is no way out by using those conventional methods, those kinds of strategies that are so conventional. All they do is trade one problem with another, one disappointment with another. And you can ask yourself, has that been your experience so far? You know, we all have our high spots, we all have our bright moments, but they don't last very long. And then there's a lot of other stuff that tends to last and changes. The details change, but the sense of dissatisfaction and disappointment can be pretty pervasive. One of the ways that this is viewed is like being coated in some kind of sticky substance, and which is our desire. And we would like to be able to move through the world in a graceful way and be admired and be effective, but we get very annoyed that all of this crap is getting stuck to us, and we have no choice. And so we get preoccupied with all the crap and wanting to get it off, but all we do is develop a bigger and bigger ball of crap. And that's the kind of thing that the skillful means of the Buddha Dharma is intended to address. How do you get under that stickiness? How do you get to the very simple experience? One of the ways it's referred to is the face before you were born, your face before you were born, before all the accumulation of experience, of accident, of striving and desire and disappointment. Before all of that happened, what was your face? What was it like? And that kind of simplicity is what these different techniques, these skillful means are designed to bring about as an experience and as a realized, lived experience. Now, as already described, if you look at meditation as a self-improvement technique that's going to help you win the game, you will be doing it in a way that will not help you much. You know, it'll help you maybe. You'll become less reactive, maybe a little less anxious, maybe have different kinds of strategies that might work better. But it still involves a shoring up our position in the mess of samsara and trying to fight against this wrong view while being inside of it. So that way of meditating really is an exhausting runaround, and we really can be stuck that way. People can get straightforward meditation instruction and really operate this way for years and years and years. Meditate daily, all of those things, but meditate as though what you're doing is winning the game of samsara. You're trying to become a better samsaric athlete so that you can really have mental fitness and emotional fitness that allows you to win the game. And as has been said by many people and also by my teacher, Jetsun Khandra Rinpoche, the problem with samsara is that nothing works. Nothing works in samsara. It doesn't work. And though we may consider ourselves sort of impatient, we're actually endlessly patient with the wrong things. We're patient with how samsara never works, how it always is one disappointment following another. But then we're like, oh, next time I'm gonna get it to happen. I'm gonna read that book. I'm gonna talk to these people. I'm gonna get it to happen. And so it's good to know, just as a side point, that we really are very patient and determined, but we're patient and determined at the sticky mess of samsara, and it's possible to shift out of that and make real, very good use of that patience and determination in a different way that really can lead to liberation. And so the first noble truth taught by the Buddha is the starting point, and that is the truth of suffering. You really cannot do meditation with a proper view if you are not very familiar with the suffering of samsara, unless you know that that game is not a winnable game, that it's a painful game, it's a very frustrating and aggravating game. If you don't know that, it's so seductive that you will, in your meditation, be playing the game. It's very seductive. You will, one more time, I'm going to get it to figure out. I'm going to go through that conversation, and I'm going to realize what I should have said, and all of that, you know. Or even the kind of very single-pointed experience that one can have can really easily be tainted with this achievement, ambitious kind of view, like, this is going to make me a spiritual athlete where I am now going to conquer by having this experience and really having the breath, you know, that's what I'm going to do. So a prerequisite for meditation is that you really appreciate what the suffering is that we have moment to moment, day by day, how it feels, how it plays out, the texture of it, the way it involves yearning and hope and desire and disappointment, sequence over and over. It actually is not that complicated, and it is very repetitive. So it really is knowable. You can know this. And you can also develop what is referred to as revulsion or renunciation, which is a real gut kind of reaction to that experience of samsara as being something you do not want anymore. Don't want that. That allows you to rest in meditation. And sometimes you can think of it as exhaustion, you know. The best rest is when you're really tired. And when you're tired of samsara, you will find it easy to rest, much easier to rest. And in some ways, the degree to which you are actually exhausted is the degree to which you will be able to rest. Because even that little bit will be so delicious to think, I can figure it out this time, you know, I can really get it to happen this time, is enough to really turn your practice, any practice that you do, into an acquisitive, ambitious, self-improving, self, you know, self with a small s, meaning the sort of star of the show, you know, that kind of self. Getting that to be, getting that to work finally work. So a really good question is, where do we put our exertion in this? How can we, if we're not putting exertion into self-improvement, what can we do? Where can we put our effort in a way that is going to help us be free, be liberated from this sticky mess? And it's not an answer that a lot of people like, but the answer is virtuous action, to use the Buddhist term. And what that really means is kindness and generosity. That is the medicine for our sick, deluded, acquisitive, impoverished sense of self that feels like there is going to be no happiness, no comfort, unless I get everything that I want. And even after I get it and realize I don't want it, which actually happens all the time, the next one, the next one, the next one. And so even though kindness and generosity is a natural expression of our basic nature, it is part of ourselves that is coded in this sticky mess. We don't really get to operate very freely often in our conventional lives because we're too busy playing the game. We're too busy trying to make sure we get what we want. And so it is necessary to be effortful around virtuous action. And the way they talk about virtue in Buddhism, I think, is it's useful to describe, because in other moral teachings, religions, there's a different view. You're not doing virtue, in a Buddhist view, you're not doing virtue because someone's keeping count and you're going to be praised or blamed about it. It's because it's healthy, that it's just naturally good to be. What is virtuous is that which has been discovered to be good for you and for others. It's good. You do the thing that's good. Like if you're poking yourself in the eye all the time, that's unvirtuous. You know, you don't have to not do that because someone tells you that don't do that, or else, you know, some superpower will be unhappy with you. You don't do it because it hurts. And if you realize that it hurts, you stop. And that's what revulsion is about. And renunciation is you begin to realize that all of this greedy kind of self-acquisitive achievement stuff really is actually a painful endeavor. It actually hurts, you know. Doing the things that are conventionally referred to as unvirtuous, lying, for example. Lying really cuts us off from connection. It's a lonely position, and it's an unnaturally lonely position. It's a sadness. It's a real sad thing. And in the course of the next thing, so that one is virtuous action. The next exertion is to acquire wisdom about what is virtuous action so that you can do it. So that involves this idea of lineage, that this information has been known, it has been discovered, and there are people going to tell you about it. If you want to know, you can come. And there still are living masters who, when you see them, you get the impression, this person has a different experience from me. And this is not a conventional person who is striving for comfort and ambitious conquering, he's not strategizing. And also we get the whole history of this going back generation after generation after generation. So you can take that or leave it, in terms of lineage, but from my point of view, it becomes, why would you believe any of this if there wasn't any reason to believe it? If you didn't have any evidence that someone who believed this was different or had reached a different state. And because it's very easy to come up with clever stuff and talk about things, And it happens all the time nowadays that people read the Buddhist traditions and they write popular books that are very sensible, because it is very evidently self-evident when you read it. There's a lot. But sometimes when you go to the book signing, they seem rather irritable. And maybe are, they don't seem quite like the person you want to be. So this is all just to say that from my point of view, these instructions are not arbitrary. They're actually the result of very great exertion of people over time who have achieved a different state and wanted to share it with people. And so here we are. So you acquire wisdom about the nature of mind and about what is virtuous and unvirtuous, and then you become able to be more deliberate about doing virtuous things, being generous and being kind on purpose in a fabricated way. You don't necessarily have to feel it all the time. You just need to go through the motions and get into the practice of it. It's part of the practice. It really is the medicine that permits you to see how painful it is to not do that. You begin to get the contrast between the pain of self-centeredness and selfishness and the expansive feeling of generosity and kindness. It really is noticeable. I did for many years. I don't ride the subway much anymore because I moved my office, but I grew up in New York, and so the subway is like a room in my house. It's part of where I live. And when I began practicing seriously, I had what I called a subway practice. When I went to rush hour to get on the train, everyone else went first. I never went first. Everyone got what they wanted from me on the subway. If they wanted to stand where I was standing, they got to. I never sat down. I just let everybody else have what they wanted. And I found my way in instead. That's not so easy to do, particularly if you grew up here, You're like beelining to, you know exactly what door to be on and how to get yourself through the crowd and all that stuff. But that kind of deliberate practice of kindness and of putting yourself second, letting others have the victory, that really is not about doing it because someone is watching. It's because it's the medicine that releases the grip of self-centeredness so that you can actually meditate with more openness and actually experience the alternative to self-centeredness and grasping while you are sitting. And if you do not, and this is the other part of the bad news of Buddhism, if you do not exert yourself in this way, you will not be liberated. It will just keep going until you die. That's the way it goes. You'll keep with your struggle inside your sticky mess, and it'll go all the way. And it requires things to be different. It requires a movement of mind. But it isn't the movement that your conventional mind would think of. It is different, and it has to come from comes from outside of you in a way, though in fact it doesn't. It is, the wisdom is intrinsic, and the experience is intrinsic. It isn't given to me. But there are very good fishermen you know. I think that's a Christian metaphor, but I really like it in Buddhism too. The Buddhist teachers have the bait, and they hang the bait, and the wisdom rises up to the bait. In you, in me, it rises up. And it's mine. So it isn't something that I have to like decide, do I trust this person, all of that stuff. I don't have to go through all of that process. It's about being, being shown something different enough, skillful enough, that this intrinsic wisdom just rises up and becomes very evident, you know. And probably here you are sitting in these, you know, on these, you know, pretty dirty cushions on the ground. They're probably 40 years old. Why do people come to these things? There's something about this stuff that really has a self-evident nature to it. There's some aspects of it that really aren't arguable. It's just like, oh yeah, that's right. So then what's next? And that's the idea that I would like to give tonight about, if you're going to do self-improvement, if you like the idea of self-improvement, the self-improvement to work on is being kind and generous. That's the one. That's the medicine that permits all this other things to occur. And it really won't occur unless that is possible. People are different. They have different states. Some people naturally really are kind of generous to different degrees. Some are really, really tight and like forget it. So where are you? You don't know. Where are you in that continuum? But you will only be healed of this obstruction of self-centeredness to the degree that you are able to be generous and kind. That's really the practice. And in traditional teaching, not what has come to the West so easily, not in terms of the great teachers who have come to the West, but the kind of books and little things on TV and on YouTube where you don't get a whole story, you get little bits and pieces. Meditation you don't start with meditation, you start with conduct. The Buddhist path begins with conduct, with right action, avoiding unvirtuous things, for all the reasons that I just said. And then you become able to do meditation. It's down the road. It's not necessarily a great idea for everyone to just sit and meditate. For some people, it's just the very intense neurotic experience where they're just like pushing really hard at it. And, for them, it's better that they stop than continue. But some people have a real determination and really suffer a great deal from that kind of wrong view around where the effort is needed, because that kind of meditation really is hard. And as I've said before, we have a great deal of patience with the hardness of samsara and that struggle. We're used to it. We think that that's the way. We need to just struggle more effectively. So struggling with meditation is really needs to be looked at. There's some of it that is just naturally part of it because there is a path. It doesn't just happen. You don't flip a switch and everything goes. There's always degrees of struggle and times of struggle and all of that. But it's important to have someone to talk to who has been doing this longer, you have reason to believe is better at it, has a more simple, kinder approach. And the most universal recommendation for how do you find that kind of teacher, how do you know the teacher is good, the first criteria is that they are kind, that they are obviously kind, that it's not a hidden quality, that it's very clear that they're kind. And so that's another suggestion for you in terms of how to go about it. The last word I'll just give is, as I mentioned, this is a path, and so I will sit and I will assess my meditation, and I will think, that was lousy meditation. I was all obsessed and the whole way through. And what the kindness practice can help develop is an ability to be kind about that too, and say, My delusion is nothing new. I've been deluded all this time. This is just, it's happened again. So, but I know it this time. That is something to be pleased about. That is something that tells you that you're on the path. So you should take encouragement from noticing the discursions and the obsessiveness that happens during practice. Not see it as a failure, but see it as an encouragement that you know it. Because it will persist. It doesn't just go away overnight. So that's a way of exerting effort too. That has to do with not during the session. It doesn't do any good to do assessment while you're at it. That's just thinking. So you don't need to think while you're on purpose while you're doing practice. But afterwards, it is reasonable to make an assessment of like, how did that go? And then again, you have the practice of kindness, that you really have to allow yourself to be soft about this and recognize that the fact that you know that this was a very noisy, deluded practice is an encouraging sign, because all before that you didn't know anything about that, So now you know. That's good news. All right, so that's enough for my talk. Are there any questions or comments people have?
Well, is this
Not
on?
on. Oh, there it goes.
Okay. Thanks for your talk. It was very interesting to hear this, and the thoughts that came to mind are when you were talking about the goal-oriented meditation in the beginning, was these Headspace advertisements you sometimes see on the trains, where there was a girl saying, I meditate to crush it at the gym or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've definitely fallen victim to that kind of thing, like, trying to get it right and beating myself up if it's not perfect. But that was helpful what you said at the end, to just being aware of that I was discursively thinking is something. The other thing about transforming this self-help, self-improvement project by using kindness and compassion, was it? Mm-hmm. It's interesting how sometimes it does organically come out of nowhere. For example, holding a door open for someone, but how quickly it can evaporate if that person doesn't say thank you. And I just think it's just funny how the intention could be there, but it's the ego is just right underneath it sometimes. Mm-hmm. So those are the two thoughts that came up for me.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to everything that you said, and I always struggle when we're talking about self-improvement, because I'm very much a driven person and always trying to achieve things. And I as you were speaking a little further, I realized I had a really interesting experience today where I was working most of the day at work on this task, trying to complete this task. But around the time of my lunch break, my friend texted me. And in the text, she seemed kind of upset, and she was talking about how sick she had been and everything was going wrong. And I sort of had this moment where I was like, wait, I have a minute, I have my own office. It's my lunch break. So I texted her back. I'm like, do you want to talk on the phone for a few minutes? I'm at work, but I can spare a few moments for you. And I even had like a super, super busy day, but I was just like, this is someone I care about. She sounds really shitty right now. And it was just such an amazing experience to be able to be there for her in a moment where, the rest of the day I was so focused on like achieving this thing. But at least I was able to do it temporarily when it seemed like she really needed me. So, I'm very thankful for your talk tonight.
Mm-hmm. And it's instructive to really feel how that is. That's not like doing it because you have to or being told or because you're afraid of punishment. It really, there's a goodness in it that is unambiguous. And even when it's just a little bit and gets like opening the door and not getting a thank you, even before the thank you happens, there's usually a little good feeling in there. That's simple.
I want to see because we're talking about good deeds, and I did try. I didn't try, but it just came out naturally. When people you can sense that when they need help, and it's that urgency, you kind of sense, and then you feel that urgency, and then something come within yourself. It's very natural to give, and I did afterwards, some of my friends said that that's too generous, and you might hurt yourself, but that wasn't bad until the person who on the receiving end kind of just turned the back, I and then I did feel that you didn't in myself. I did feel that you have no idea that I've just saved you 2 years of struggle, and of course that person doesn't know. But when that thought arise, I kind of just feel guilty about why did I think that way. But on the other hand, there was big dent here. Is like I did do something and really save, kind of really help you. But it's like, I feel that if I find that person more virtuous in a way, then the effort was really worth it. But it came back a little bit harder because I found that person appreciative and virtuous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is so I want to know like the guilt, the guilt, Buddhist and its guilt. It has been my struggle. I mean, I am really burdened, guilt-ridden a lot of time, and I will even feel sorry if I step on an ant or yeah, something like that. And it's just like it's.
Yeah, the skillful way of having remorse is that it gets in the way of doing it again. That it actually changes what you do. I was at a teaching where this came up, and my teacher, someone was saying, it's very similar, like, I'm plagued with guilt, it gets in the way, I treat these people well, and, some similar, and I feel guilty about it. And she said, you should feel guilty, you should feel worse, you should feel so bad that you don't do that again, that you should feel it when, the thing about unvirtuous things is that they are intrinsically painful. That's their nature. And so feeling that is actually accurate. Turning it into a big guilt story is neurotic. That's not needed. But the actual pain of being cruel or being unkind or being, angry at someone, it has its, it really has a taste of its own, and that's real. But like you say, also in terms of this being a practice, it is easy for us, certainly easy for me and my confusion, to be overly entangled with others in terms of trying to help. And then it becomes problematic. It's not a skillful helping, And when you help and then it depends upon how the other person reacts, that's not so skillful, That's being sort of stuck in the self-centeredness of our normal experience. Now, that is not something to feel guilty about. As I was saying before, that is something to be encouraged by, that you notice it, That you notice it and you know enough to know that having that self-centered feeling of not being appreciated is not really good for you. It's not good for you. So that there can be something clean about that too. It doesn't have to be so sticky where it really dwells. So when I talk about kindness and generosity as a practice, I think it's best to do it in a way that's small, This doesn't mean go to the most difficult person in your life and try to help them. It doesn't mean that, because you have to be better at it first. You have to really develop it. The subway practice that I described was with strangers. There's something easier about that. I'm never going to see them again for the most part, and there's something I could do where I wasn't expecting response. It was actually small. What I was doing was not really noticeable, really, to anybody but me, because it was my own selfishness that I was thwarting. It's not like I was giving people presents and they were like amazed that I didn't like jump in front of them on the train. I just didn't jump in front of them and they went their way. So I think it's good to do these things in small ways and allow that to be really felt also. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, just to comment on what you just said.
It's on.
I kind of disagree with what you're saying, that it was just small things on the subway and nobody noticed. Because when you behave that way, it's putting out an energy. And that energy is of like kindness or caring, and you're setting a tone in your individual way that's catchy, and other people catch on to that. So I think that it's very important, that energy. And especially if you're on the subway in the morning, you're just kind of like generating a feeling of caring and loving kindness, and everybody tunes into it. And I think that's really important. Can't underestimate
You're
that
right.
kind of behavior.
You're right. And I think you're right that but it's also true that there are people who are, like I have spent much of my life on the subway, so self-centered that I was not so noticing. I didn't notice so much other things like that nature, And the point I was raising is that to expect a thank you, it's a situation where you wouldn't expect a thank you, and so you don't have that vulnerability of being disappointed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not expecting anything in return.
But I think you're right that it does set a tone, and people do respond differently. It
Yeah.
softens the air.
Yeah, it's very important to...
And I did find that to be true. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
The other day I offered my seat on the bus to a lady that looked like she was about to give birth.
Uh-huh.
And she was with a little toddler, and she had the little girl sit down. And then there was a senior citizen standing there, and she said, "Well, if you're not going to sit down, I want your child's seat." And the whole thing was so ridiculous. I kind of started laughing, because the pain and suffering that this woman with the big belly was causing all of us, this distress on a moving bus,
Uh-huh.
it's very distressful to see someone like that could be hurt at any moment. I mean, the whole thing was kind of funny. So you kind of have to let go of your good intentions or whatever,
Mhm.
but you do what's in your heart, and that's always the right thing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's an excellent practice, of course, of generosity.
Mhm. Thanks. Is there another? Okay. One last one.
Thank you, Michael. That was wonderfully clear. I feel like the two of you are actually saying the same thing. It's been my experience that since I started to turn the volume down just slightly on the discursive thought about me and how great I am and what my adventures are and what I'm going to get next and how much I like the last thing I got, I have an incrementally greater sense of what I could do for people around me, for when I could hold the door for them, when they do need to go ahead of me in line at the deli, whatever.
Mhm.
And what I find is that the very smallest gesture can have tremendously powerful results. And it might be because it's New York City and people are so unaccustomed to it, but I think what Michael was saying is that we don't have to necessarily identify what might be called a Hail Mary. Like, we need to seek out a burning building so that we can snatch a child out of it. But that the very smallest things can have super powerful effects, because then people can be grateful in ways that are startling to me. They may not say thank you, but if you're looking at their face, you've definitely had the experience of seeing how excited they are. And then there's a little halo effect from that, where 2 or 3 other people will be like, oh, why is that person so happy? Right? So it's making the effort.
Yeah.
Like 25 tiny things a day could be as powerful or more powerful than one marquee event,
Right.
if you will.
Right. And I think really that my experience is Manhattan can be a field of virtue simply because of that it's crowded. It's all it needs to be, is so crowded. It is so easy to be generous in the city. All you have to do is just not take the lead every single time, just let the other person go by. Look at the cashier in the face when you go through the process. Those things, really very easy. And, I'm a native New Yorker, and I don't really ascribe to the New Yorkers are like this kind of thing, because in fact, they're mostly the tourists or the recent arrivals who are so overcome by the crowd that they act irritably and stuff. The New Yorkers I know are used to it and know how to be more graceful in all the rush and the bustle. So it really is an opportunity. You get it every moment practically. Walking right out this door, there's going to be a lot of opportunity between here and the subway.
But I think regardless, there's a cultural bias to, in some cases, treat people like objects. So your example of the cashier is perfect. It's like you're just a meat operating accessory of the cash register that's in front of you, and I give you the money and you give me what I want. Is completely different from, you're a really beautiful person and I want to smile at you because I'm excited that you're my cashier.
Yeah. And that's true. That's true. But I know I'm also a neuroscientist, an animal behaviorist, and crowding does that. This is way beyond healthy density for primates, way beyond. Primates become irritable and self-centered, and they throw their shit when they're this crowded. That's what they do. So we're dealing with that. We're fighting. That's part of our challenge about living in the city. It's not just about us being, temperamentally irritable. It is an irritating circumstance, and it's not hopeless, and you can pay attention. It's a real opportunity, and so that's good to know that you're not fighting against your temperament. You're fighting against the circumstance and the rush and the hundreds of people coming back and forth. There is room because the quality is really intrinsic and is really present. It's just about giving it some space. It's not like you have to invent it. Because if it was a temperamental issue, you would have to sort of invent it and like act as if. And I'm not talking about that so much. Yeah, and try to, with attention, give it some room so that you don't just get swept in the activity and the rush, Yeah. Right. That's right. The spaciousness is in the mind, and the mind can be constrained by perceived stresses and perceived pressures and all of those things. It can end up with an experience of a mind that's tight and doesn't have room for much. So, all right, everyone, thanks very much. And sure. Oh, yes, an announcement. This coming weekend, which is, since this is going to be recorded, I'll give the actual date. In Red Hook, upstate New York, at KPL, which is and I don't know how that spells out in Tibetan. It's Barder Tulku Rinpoche's place. The teacher who I study with is going to be teaching on this August 5th and 6th, if you would like to go. I can tell you more if you want to know. Yes, I certainly recommend it. Thanks. Okay. Yes, thank you.